Save it for the show.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna bring it up.
I'll sit here.
Yep.
You too? Okay, cool.
That's what I figured.
Yep. I don't have any followers on that platform, so we might not get like 2 minutes, but whatever.
You don't need any streaming software to do that. You just put it on your phone and go.
Yeah. Yep. The YouTube platform has it right there. Push live. You guys want to cross the water?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we've been looking at doing the YouTube live stuff, and I thought you had to download some software, but maybe you don't.
From your phone, I think maybe.
It's different.
If you want to do like.
I selected it in my, I tried doing it for the first time in my YouTube account, and it said once verified the account, that is you, so it sent me a text to my phone, I put the information in, and then it said it will take 24 hours to complete setup. And then 24 hours later it worked.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we just got regained control of our YouTube channel that we initially set up when we were doing like a collective thing after all the changes happened.
Yeah.
But
What's your YouTube channel?
it's Talking Elite Fitness. Yeah, it was called something different before, but we had to like do a change.
Gotcha.
So today was opening day, wasn't it?
Baseball? In quotations.
There's a ball. That's been very, very good to me. What do you think of that logo I sent you with that? How funny was that?
Oh, dude.
I was like, all right, you win.
Four, Super One.
You guys obviously saw the doc.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it? You saw it?
Yeah. Sean, you've seen most of it, right?
I've seen the event parts of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen clips here and there, but I have not sat down and watched the whole thing. What'd you think?
It was cool. It was entertaining.
From what I saw, the parts that Tommy and I were going,
Because we did a lot of voiceover work for it, so when they came out, I just had to read.
Oh, so that wasn't your actual call?
I mean, more or less was what I said live. I just had to redo it.
Okay. Is that what we did when we did ours too?
Yes and no. Well, after Tony left,
Yeah.
because we just recalled the entire thing with Tony.
Yeah.
Which is
A pain in the ass.
oh, most tedious thing I've ever done in my life. But we would keep as much of the live as we could, just because we just liked the way it sounded better.
Yeah.
But there were times where we'd have to cut an event and throw it to a break, or we'd have to compress time, and then you'd have to redo some stuff.
Okay.
How's Doug?
She was naughty, so I put her up.
Uh-oh.
He asked how's Doug, and I said she was naughty, so I put her up.
Where did you get the name Doug for a female dog?
Well, when I decided I want to get a dog, Sage, my wife, was like, "Hey, we're gonna name the dog Doug, regardless of gender."
Oh, okay.
So, and then it ended up being a female, and I'm like, I said we can name it Doug regardless of gender, so we're keeping Doug. It's a cool name because it's easy to just use Doug. No, one syllable, just Doug. Doug, come. Doug, sit.
How old is she now? She's not receiving.
Almost a year. Almost a year. Yeah. So you guys do film also?
We do. We haven't started putting it up yet.
Okay.
But we're just starting to collect it, so we'll start to when we start to put out stuff on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
It's more for the video. We'll take the audio from there and just sync them.
Okay.
But honestly, like I don't want to put the whole fucking episode up. I just want to like clips here and there, just to be able to have some cool sound bites and things like that.
What do you think of the new Rams logo?
Trash. Fucking horrible. In fact, this is the winner right here. Let me show you.
I like the ram head. It's cool.
It's not as good as it is. It's just terrible. Like what?
I love it. Sean said it to me. He was just,
This is my favorite one. Like this thing's the cake.
That's good. Send me, text me that.
You posted that
Yeah. You know what's funny? Someone was gonna post one he had done to his Instagram, and I'm like, hey, here's the deal. I like when I post that to my story, I realize like not as many people as we think know about it.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of us who do know about it, but there's also a lot of people who are like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know? So.
Oh, yeah, the right people know.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a type of person who knows. I'm like, don't put it on your main account page. I almost did. I almost posted it as a post. I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize in the image they sent me that you could actually see his junk. I just saw his face. I thought, yeah, I know. I saw that later because someone said on my Instagram, someone goes, hey man, my kids look at this. And I'm like, so what? It's just, I was thinking, so what? It's just his face. And then I re-looked at it, I'm like, oh.
Whoops. That's different. Yeah, but Eric Dickerson has now taken up the cause of going to the Rams and being like, you got to change this. Like,
They won't. I bet you they
Oh,
won't.
of course they won't. They
won't.
put no.
Yeah. How many, was there options? Was there really options or you just?
I don't know. I mean, it's been
Okay.
going on for 2 years, and my thought was is that they would, as a fan who stuck with the team for since 1979.
Take fan input.
I think that people who have stuck with them just wanted the team back. They just wanted it restored, not rebranded.
Yeah.
So just go back to everything you had, the blue and gold. The colors are right, like they got that right. Go back to the old classic logo and just maybe update it a little bit and make everybody happy. Be like, because there is history there. I think to totally rebrand it, it just ignores all of that and makes it seem like we have to go in a new direction to
establish.
ourselves, and you don't. But you were there for 50 years.
What do you think of Gurley leaving?
It sucked, but it was the right call.
Yeah.
They couldn't. You can't pay him that amount of money for the amount of production you just can't.
Look at what they're doing with running backs now.
You don't pay running backs. You just don't. It sucks.
All the running back free agents like this year are getting paid jack shit.
Yeah, because it's like every play you're in a car wreck.
Yeah.
And then they sit out of here. Someone would sit out of here to try to.
I look at what Le'Veon Bell went to the Jets and what he did.
He got lucky too.
Yeah.
But he didn't produce.
Yeah. He got paid, didn't produce.
Shitty team.
It's the easiest position to replace.
You want to make sure this one doesn't work?
Oh, does it work? Yeah, plug it in. Just here, plug it in. Was that on 3?
Yeah. But do you want to stand?
You have the rate.
Me?
Yeah, plug it in. I got to stand.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. That's just a special stand here. Actually, the other one.
You getting back into rucking stuff right now, or?
I will soon, not right now, hardcore.
Yeah.
I ran recently. I've been running a little. I'm not, here's the thing, I'm not even running a lot, but I was trying to get under 20 minutes in 3 mile, and I finally did that. You know Austin Bighamy?
Yeah.
He ran in like 1850. I was like, damn, that's fast.
I didn't realize he's that good of a runner.
He's not, but he is now. But he's been running a lot. He's been
Yeah.
following new news. If you run a lot, you're running from the
Yeah.
That's the guy.
Damn. Alright. Just now getting back into running again.
Into what?
Into running again.
Running's fun. Here's what I like about running. You can't think during the process.
Yeah.
Like you can't like zone out and think about work or think about other things. You're just fucking trashing yourself. But when you go on a run, you just modulate the speed and you think and you can like process things and enjoy it. You don't do that during a CrossFit workout.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is different. Some people just don't enjoy it at all.
I'm so bad at it.
But if you were to go slower, than you're even going now, you might enjoy it more. That's why people
That's
enjoy
true.
running. They enjoy it when they're running at a pace that's enjoyable.
I did that. I did
You
like a
can't
30-minute run.
you can't do CrossFit at a pace that's enjoyable. There's no like I'm just
You're
gonna
not
do,
gonna get results.
I'm gonna do Cindy slow and no Cindy slow sucks too.
Yeah.
You end up with 8 rounds and
Yeah,
it
and
still sucks.
And you're pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck. I like.
Or framed slow. You just want to end the pain. Like you don't want to 21 thrusters slow.
Yeah. I basically like, because I did an ultra in August, September, and it was in San Diego, in Noble Canyon.
Okay, I don't know that area.
It's up in the hills. One of the guys Alison Garcia, she used to work at HQ. Her husband Bill is a runner who's with me too. I did it with this like running group that we have. Chairman of the board of 511 Tacticals on it.
Oh, cool.
In that group, and
That's not Tom, is it?
no, it's oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember his name right now. Older guy.
Okay.
But Bill's brother was a SEAL. I think he was an instructor too. His name's Hans.
Oh yeah. Fuck, I know who you're talking about. Okay, keep going though.
Yeah, and so he lives like 100 meters from the start line. So we just went down and crashed with him, and then ran the race. And then after I got done, I was like, I need to take a break. But I'm just now getting back.
That type of run. Now that's a different type of run.
Yeah,
That's something different.
it was it was the first 8.5 miles were like up the canyon too. So
I'm talking about that distance.
yeah,
That distance is like, once you start talking marathons and longer, marathons actually are probably worse than some of the ultras, just because a marathon you can run the entire thing.
Yeah.
Ultras you have to walk.
at some point, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't.
You have to walk / hike. Yeah.
I didn't
Especially
train
especially those trail ultras.
Yeah.
Those are big hikes.
Well, the year before, right before the layoffs, me and Rory were training for a 50-mile.
The one in San Francisco.
Yeah, and that got canceled. And then so for some reason I laid off my training, and then I was like, I'll just hop back into this one, and I was under condition.
That shit will beat someone up like Rory. Kelly Starrett was doing one a while back too, and like you guys are just too big for that. Well, you would be too.
Oh, there's
You're
no
on
way.
the verge of being too big.
Yeah, I'm close. And I cut 10 pounds for it.
Yeah.
Because at the same time I was training for a jiu-jitsu tournament and a kickboxing fight, so I was like, I have to cut the weight, otherwise.
Jeez, man.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Superman.
No. Pick an activity and stick with it.
Well, I had a lot more time on my hands
That's a good point.
back then, but
Yeah, when you're doing a CrossFit workout, you hurt, but you don't feel like you're actually doing damage to yourself. When I run, I feel like I'm seriously damaging myself.
yeah.
Well, that's how I got that really acute hip bursitis when Sheena went into labor, and I couldn't walk. When you saw me,
I forgot.
oh god, that's the worst.
Okay, good. Audio working? You're
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can
Cool.
bring it a little bit closer to you.
Okay.
Adjust it as needed to what's comfortable, but this is a good distance.
Okay, cool. Oop. You're live. All right, it was able to save it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't do much on it. I'm gonna post some more videos, I think maybe, but no big plans for it. I've had it for years, probably longer than that on Instagram.
Oh well,
A lot of people are becoming really active on it.
yeah, because you got a captive audience.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Social distancing. We got
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
3
I
feet.
We're at appropriate distance.
Got the nice table space.
Yeah.
We run in the same social circle, so it's not like you're gonna
Yep.
infect them or something.
It's basically been stuck at home.
All right, cool. Should we just go?
Yep.
All right.
I'm ready to go.
I'm recording. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Fitness with Friends. I'm Sean Woodland with Tommy Marquez. We are at the historic ranch in Aromas, California, which means we are speaking with the one and only director of the CrossFit Games, Dave Castro. Dave, thanks so much for doing this, man. How you been?
Good. Thanks for having me. I've been, just dealing with all the craziness that the whole world's dealing with. So it's been a wild ride for everyone.
Yeah, how are you adjusting to this kind of new normal?
Well, it's it's nice that I've always social distanced and kept to myself anyways, and my routine hasn't changed much. You know, before this, my routine was I work in the morning at home, and then I come here to the ranch, do some stuff here, work here, and then head back home and just kind of bounce back and forth between these two locations. And that's what I'm still doing. I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth from home to the ranch. And so my routine is very simple.
Yeah. And I mean, with all the changes and stuff like that, what does work look like right now? I know you guys, I mean, from the training side of things and from the game side of things, there's probably a ton of changes or things being put in the works right now.
Yeah, so my routine is the same except for right this minute, because for the training side, we're actually scrambling and putting together a online option for level 1. So for the last week, the last 4 days, I've been at HQ. We're filming the lectures, filming the breakouts, and I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen for sure, but we have it in the bank just in case we need to go there. We're gonna have a online option.
Nice.
For those people who are relatively, I don't want to say new to CrossFit, but who haven't been around since the beginning of the games, how did you become the director of the CrossFit Games?
Well, the games, so I was working for CrossFit for Greg for about a year before the games even came into existence, and I got my foot in the door with CrossFit through the training department. And that's still one of my primary roles with CrossFit, is running the seminar department with Nicole Carroll. And we oversee all the level 1s, level 2s, all the courses we offer, and all the staff. We develop and train them to run the courses for us. Well, in 2006, I moved out here. I got stationed out here to go to DLI, Defense Language Institute, which is in Monterey. While I was going there in Monterey, I knew that CrossFit had been doing CrossFit for less than a year, and I knew that CrossFit was based out of Santa Cruz. And I was actually at that time living here on the ranch in my family's house. And so since I knew CrossFit was there, I was new to CrossFit, going to DLI, I started commuting from Monterey, from here to Santa Cruz to do CrossFit classes with the original CrossFit HQ people, CrossFit Santa Cruz people. And I met Greg, and I met Tony, and I met Nicole, and they kind of took me under their wing. And Greg's very gracious with military people. He offered me to train there for free. Then they offered me to come to a seminar. I went to a level 1. After that, I kept going there and working out, and eventually Greg asked about help out at a level 1. So I started helping out at level 1s, just moving chairs and being a fly on the wall. And that role eventually grew and expanded, and I became more and more involved. While that was going on, Greg and I developed a close friendship, and in early 2007, I brought him out here to the ranch, and we were walking around outside, and he goes, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to have an event here?" And I go, "Yeah, for sure. Anything you want to do, Greg. What are you thinking?" He's like, "I don't know. Let's do something like the Woodstock of fitness. Let's get together a bunch of people and have a little competition." I said, "Okay, cool. When do you want to do it?" He goes, "This summer." And so we started planning the first CrossFit Games, the 2007 CrossFit Games. That's the hopper right there that we used.
Oh, yeah.
That's the original scoreboard that and it's fading now, or the dry erase markers coming off on some locations. But that's what we used for the 3 events that we had in that first year of the games. And the people who came, the people got invites. We posted something on .com. And at the time, it was like all the people who were commenting, the community, especially back then, really lived on .com. Mm-hmm. There wasn't Facebook and social media platforms like there are now back then. And so people would create the communities within the comments. And so you look at those names, AFT, OPT, Spieler, Josh, most of those guys were posting the top times on the workouts of the day, every day. And everyone would look, "What's AFT's time?" He usually had the best times.
Yeah.
OPT was close. Spieler was up there, of course.
It's Brett Marshall, right?
AFT's Brett Marshall, OPT's James Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. Yep. And those were the 2 Canadians, and they were like the Northern Stars, the guys from up north who were just crushing it. There was a couple, the female side, the first games, I really wanted Nicole Carroll, Eva T, and Annie Sakamoto to do the games. I really wish they would have, because one of them would have been, whichever 3 would have done it would have been, no offense, Jolie, but they would have been the first female CrossFit Games champion. But they, for whatever reason, they all had different reasons, they didn't really want to do it. It was actually a few years before Annie decided she would start competing, like 2 or 3 years after the games had been. I might have that wrong, but definitely wasn't the first 2. She didn't do the first 2.
I think she
Did she do the second?
Yeah, she maybe did like a team. Did she do a team?
Oh, that's
yeah.
probably what it was,
I think
yep.
she did a team like for fun, and then she an individual. She didn't go to 2011
Yep.
because that was there's that famous shot of her going hand over hand with the chopsticks in her hair.
It would have been cool if she would have started a little earlier.
Yeah.
On the individual side, she'd be a like a legend and a champion.
Yeah.
From the early period.
And so so the early years, you know, the games get going here, and it goes from, you know, we've said this, you know, in our media efforts, from a backyard barbecue to this like worldwide phenomenon. How did that start to grow, and how did your role kind of develop into being the director and having this bigger hand in how all of this goes down?
Man, it's crazy. Like we did the first year. We had probably 60 or 70 competitors and maybe 100 fans. It was a cool get together. It was a fun event, and once it was over, we were like, that was fun, that was cool. On to the next thing, back onto training. And months later, probably in early 08, Tony goes, hey, so we're gonna do this thing again, Tony Budding. And I said, I don't know, should we? And we asked Greg, and he's like, yeah, let's do it again. Like, we were even thinking maybe we don't even do that event anymore. So we're like, yeah, let's do it. He's like, let's do it. So we decide, Tony's like, well, let's put something online, let's open up registrations so we can see if there's any interest. So we opened up registration, and with like half an hour, I don't remember what the time frame was, but it was fast, a couple hundred people signed up. And we're like, oh wow, like there is interest. And so we capped the registration at I think 300. And so we then had to, it was open registration just as 07 was.
Yeah.
We then had to deal with all these people showing up and putting on an event where we can cycle through 300 people. And we came up with, we had multiple events going on at the same time, and it was a logistical nightmare, but it worked out in the end. And that was kind of one of the early phases where it's like, okay, this is gonna be something. Then in 09, we actually had qualifying stages to get there. And that, you could say that was the like foundation for everything that came later in terms of regionals, in terms of sanctioned events, in terms of all the different directions you can go, even in terms of the open. Interestingly, in 09, we tested a online qualifier, we call it the last chance qualifier. And so a handful of people qualified in 09. Spencer Hendel was one of them.
Didn't Hackerbrook get in last chance?
I don't know if he did, but Hendel definitely did. And there was a few others. And that was via submitting a video, doing workouts and submitting a video and reviewing them and ranking the guys and bringing the top ones. Well, those games were much larger. It just felt like, okay, this is gonna be something. It's a sport, it can grow, it has a lot of potential. 2010, we were supposed to do them here again, or 2010, and the county said we couldn't do it here, so that's how we ended up going to the StubHub Center. The first year we were there, Home Depot Center, it was, we were maybe there prematurely.
Yeah.
There was a lot of empty seats, but then after that, you know, it was not premature to be there, at least in the Coliseum. In the soccer stadium, you know, we never filled that up, but there was years where there's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
I'm curious how your background as a Navy SEAL influences the way you program.
Oh, I think it does a lot, but not, I'm not thinking like, oh, when I was a Navy SEAL, I did this, but so much of that is my foundation, especially when you look at some of the team events, the worm that came from, you know, and actually, so in BUD/S, we would do this thing called log PT, and it's just a big log telephone pole, and there's 6 or 7 of us on it, and you do things shoulder to overhead, squat, and really it's just a beat down session for that selection process in the training. Well, early on I told Bill, let's bring that to the games. And so we made logs, and the first year we had the worm, it was actually at the games, and Leah Pulaski and other athletes, their ears got destroyed. They got just so beat up. I mean, I remember seeing Leah just covered in blood at the end of the final event where we used that. So we were like, okay, worked at SEAL training, maybe it's not good for the athletes at the games. That's what led to then, I told Bill, let's make a soft worm. I don't remember if I told him or it's his idea. A lot of these ideas come from one of us. Yeah. And whatever, we came up with a soft worm, and that was, we had a split log too. So we had a log that had sections to it, and that was even worse because and that's another thing, we had that at BUD/S too, but for that environment it seemed to work. Here it didn't. one guy got his finger caught in between the two sections of the log and just smashed. And so we ended up going to the soft worm, the worm, and that's been a much better implement. I'm really happy with that. It's a good way to test teamwork, and you don't kill people or physically injure them.
And do you feel like you're able to kind of tap? By all accounts, Buds is kind of put on this pedestal as this kind of crucible that people have to go through physically. And do you kind of tap into that? Are you able to kind of, I don't know, maybe reminisce or pull from that experience to kind of search for stimuluses and things you want to push these athletes to? Because I mean, you're talking tip of the spear, very similar to what you're training for as a SEAL, and sometimes you're trying to find those outer limits a little bit.
Yes, but in a different way. I'm not. So the thing about Buds is the duration and Buds is a mental game, really. There's obviously a huge physical component to it, but it's a 6-month-long training cycle. And what makes it so hard is not an individual day, not an individual test within a day, but the fact that you got to do this for 6 months. That something like that could never be replicated at the game. So I don't go there. And even a typical day, I've heard there's been some people who've said, especially when we have big days at the games. Some people have said, "Oh, he's just trying to make it like Buds," and that's couldn't be farther from the truth. Our biggest days at the games are not the demands of Buds.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of physical, like the guys are doing stuff that nobody at Buds can do, of course, within some time frame. But at the games, on big days, they'll do an event in the morning. Let's say it's a 2-hour event, and then they'll have a few hours rest. And then they'll do another really quick event, and they'll have a few hours rest, and then they'll come back. You don't have that luxury at Buds. If I was trying to replicate Buds, it'd be very different.
Yeah.
These guys would be going the whole day. But that's not how you find the fittest alive. Buds isn't trying to find the fittest alive, and I'm not trying to recreate what happens at Buds. But some of that stuff, again, so much of that, even unconsciously, is influenced by not only Buds, but the 12 and a half years I was a SEAL. So there, that period of my life is foundational to me and very much made me into the man I am. And that drives a lot of the decisions I make, a lot of the things I do. It is who I am, even though, and I'm very proud of this, I don't wear it on my chest like so many people do. There's so many guys now who their identity is so-and-so, the Navy SEAL. The Navy, so-and-so did this in the SEAL team. It was a very deliberate thing with Greg and Tony. When I started working with CrossFit, I told them, hey, I don't want to be known as a Navy SEAL. I don't want you guys to talk about it or lead with it. Yeah. Especially because I was still active duty when I was working for CrossFit. That's the major reason. But I needed my identity to be established in this community, not for what I did in the past or what I was at that moment, but for what I did with this community and in the future going forward. And even now, it's more known now than it ever has been. But even within the last few months, I've had people go, "I just found out you're a Navy SEAL. That's really cool." Yeah. And I'm proud of that. I'm really proud that I didn't lead and lean on and make that a crutch that I fall back. I hardly ever reference it. Yeah. And that's very deliberately. But it doesn't mean I don't. It's a huge part of my life. If Greg didn't give me this opportunity to work with CrossFit, I would have for sure stayed in and done 20 and retired as a SEAL. But this opportunity was a great opportunity, so I chose to get out at 12 and a half years and work full time for CrossFit. Yeah.
It seems like and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've mentioned it before, but there's maybe been a shift in terms of like the silent professional versus like, the maybe climbing of the profession in recent years, just because, books and movies and things get a hold of it, and once kind of Hollywood sinks their teeth into it, it shines it in a different light.
I was brought up in a phase where the silent professional ethos was a really big deal, and guys took that to heart. And there was some of the mentors and people who I looked up to kind of beat that into you physically and metaphorically. But it was very important to us to be, we're the tip of the spear, and people aren't supposed to know what we do, and that's okay. And we're not supposed to brag about what we do. And that kind of in the last 4 or 5 years has been lost, and I think there's some people who really see it as an opportunity to catapult themselves into celebrity, and I don't think that's what it's for. And interestingly, I would go as far to blame it on the Navy, and here's why I blame it on the Navy. There was a movie they made in 2000 and I was still in. I think it was 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around then. It was called, what was it? Everybody watched it. It was that movie that had real SEALs as the actors.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness.
I remember it. I don't think
Yeah.
I can tell you the name.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So here we go. We had the Navy as a recruiting tool and recruiting effort take real SEALs, put them in a movie, make a movie, and then they launched the movie, produced the movie, and made it a big Hollywood hit. What message does that send to young SEALs and young operators? It sends the wrong message. It sends the message that, oh, look at our leadership is going to take advantage of our sailors and promote them and profit off of them and use them as a recruiting tool. Well, when I get out, why don't I tell my story? Why don't I do the same?
Yeah.
That was, in my eyes, the foundation that created the culture that we're in now, where a lot of guys are talking about things they shouldn't talk about. And some, I'm not gonna point anybody out, but I've been critical of this to my friends or to others I know, and some people have painted the other side of the picture and said, hey, here's the deal, Dave. You were able to transition out and be successful without having to lean on it, but don't hold it against those guys for now being successful for leaning on it. They're just trying to put food on their plates too, and they didn't have the same opportunities you did for them to become, progress out of their military career onto something else. They decided to leverage that and don't hold that against them. So I see that side of the argument too.
Yeah.
But I can still have my feelings on it.
Yeah, of course.
You've amassed quite a body of work when it comes to the games, and regionals, and programming. What are some of the favorite events that you programmed throughout your career with CrossFit?
I was just telling someone was asking me yesterday. Someone was asking me about the Open and the workouts this year, and they're like, "Well, wasn't the first one?" And I'm like, "I don't even fucking remember so many of these. I don't remember what the Open was this year because there's so many of these events. In my garage, I have these boards of all the Opens, and there's since 2000. When was the first Open?
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 9.
Yeah, so there's 9 different boards, and it has all the workouts. And I was looking at it the other day, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of just Open workouts that I've programmed, and I couldn't tell you every single one. So it's funny. Usually my memories and favorites and things like that are of recent things. Like it's because they're the most, they're fresh in my mind. I really liked the first event at the games this year. I really also like the classic stuff. I like the what did I call it? The standard. That was really cool because the standard was something I had played with, not me physically, but the concept of it like a decade ago, a really long time ago, when I was still we were teaching seminars in San Diego, and I think I said to someone, I wonder if Josh Everett could do, because he was at the time one of the premier CrossFitters. Someone like Josh could finish Grace, Isabel, and 30 muscle-ups in under 10 minutes. And back then, I remember a couple people tried it, and I think some people got really close. 1 or 2 might have, and so I wanted to see it this year, see how much better guys can do at it. I really like the benchmarks. Anytime we revisit something, those are all very intriguing to me to see how people do. I'm a big fan of core classic CrossFit workouts.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff, the O course, some of that stuff's really fun. I do like diving into and creating tests out of those things. And those things we do that are like kind of on the fringe of what we normally do, they're really hard, and they take a lot of testing and they take a lot of effort to make sure it comes out the way we want and it's the right test.
Yeah. And what was it like seeing? I mean, I think it was a nice eye opener for people to see that the standard as a workout and as a concept is something that's been baking for a decade, and I think that opened people's eyes to the process and the length of it, and that programming isn't necessarily just this like 1 year to the next, that things are cooking and developing over time. So what was it like to see that take place and actually see some athletes meet the standard, and some athletes fall somewhere in between? It's
great, and here's the thing, at this stage too, when programming that, at this stage I knew a lot of people are going to be able to finish it, because that's just where all these guys are. The bar on everything has been raised and is continually raised. That it wasn't a question, but it was all about establishing some benchmark times on an event like that. Oftentimes there's always events or workouts or tests, we'll call them, that I'll program, and you have so many and stuff gets pushed off. Okay, this is all really good, but it can't fit this year. And a lot of things roll over, a lot of ideas are multi-year. When I brought them back here and did the run, that was like 3 or 4 years in the making. So there's a lot of things that are as you said, constantly being utilized.
Yeah.
We talked about this at the top, the way that the current coronavirus situation has affected baseball, hockey, basketball, the Olympics have now postponed. Are you guys, what if any contingency plans are you looking at right now?
We're looking at a lot of contingency plans. Obviously, one big one being not doing them.
Yeah.
Right.
That's looking more and more likely to happen. There's delaying it. There's delaying it a year, just skipping the year. There's also talk about doing it online. So we're looking at all options. The online option sounds intriguing, interesting. It's kind of who we are in some degree. Like foundationally, we start online. What if it was to end online, and everyone was able to play even?
Yeah.
So, and not over the course of 5 weekends, but maybe over the course of a weekend, just like the games. That it needs to be fleshed out, but these are some of the things we're looking at and talking about. But I also think there's a lot of value in just holding tight for a little bit longer and watching how this all plays out. Was the Olympics premature in making their decision? Once the country started saying they're not going to send their athletes, they kind of had no choice.
Yeah,
the athletes forced that hand of that decision.
Do you feel like the games, at least, the Olympics are an entirely different scope and logistics issue. Do you feel like the games at least have a little bit more time bought to kind of weigh and see how things play out compared to the Olympics in that regard?
I do, for sure. We're so much smaller, so many less moving parts. So we do have the luxury of time, a little more than they do.
Yeah. Do you, do you feel like there's a particular, there's like a date or a region in the calendar that you have circled as like, we kind of want to have an idea by this point, or like, this is when we got to pull the chute by this time?
It's approaching quickly, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Could you do it without fans?
Yes, that would be a lot of fun, actually.
Why do you say that?
I mean, just well, here's the interesting thing on that. I mean, somebody should be doing some sort of sport right now without fans. And I hope UFC, I hope Dana White, I hope they do this Khabib fight, Ferguson. Whoever cracks this and starts doing a sport without fans, their numbers are gonna go through the roof because we're all bored. We all want to see something.
Right now.
Yeah, exactly.
People are watching racing marbles
I'm
on
watching
TV.
kickball. Yeah, I got to put it on, man.
So someone should crack that nut soon if this continues on like it's continuing, and give us some sports, give us some entertainment. I hold hope that Dana White and the UFC will do it with Khabib and Ferguson.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would do it, but
Yeah.
I think it would be really cool to do. I'd really like to do it, but I don't know if we would.
Yeah. Do you, so in that regard, I guess it's kind of maybe self-evident, but if other sports start to take the field again, that kind of, you think that
That would
makes
definitely help.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that definitely help us in making that decision.
Let's assume best case scenario the games do take place.
Yep.
This will be the second straight year that they are not on any sort of broadcast television.
Yep.
How do you grow the sport when people outside the CrossFit bubble aren't getting exposed to the games?
Yeah, it's a good question, but it's also, you couldn't prove to me that people outside the bubble aren't getting exposed to it. I only say that because there are a lot of other people covering it, you guys, and a lot of other work that you're doing. I know you guys are in the bubble, but some of that seeps out, and some people, through family, through friends, through word of mouth, it's kind of gone back to like organic growth, and there is something to organic growth. There is something to that model, and so it's not as accelerated, let's just say, as it would have been with the other platforms that we had, but I still believe it's happening. It's just happening in a different way, and that's the path that was chosen for us to go down.
Yeah. Would you like to see it maybe get back on the broadcast to have that kind of exposure? I mean, just
for sure, that'd be great. I mean, there's no reason why it shouldn't be, or there are a few reasons, but there's no why we shouldn't go back. Yeah,
for sure. And I guess like the last time we saw it in 2018, do you feel like the community is better prepared after these changes to be able to put forth a product, at least from a core CrossFit perspective?
The community,
so now I guess my question is, we've been off the broadcast. It's things have been a little bit more diversified and decentralized from a media perspective. Do you think if we're able as a community to find a way to get it back on the broadcast, you feel like the message this time would be better, or it would be better suited to not just the sport but like the core CrossFit concept? Or do you feel like, 'cause I feel like maybe, and this is me kind of guessing a little bit or speculating, that maybe the message that was put out the first time didn't encompass enough of the training and the classic CrossFit side.
The first time being last year, the 19.
Yeah. Or 2018 when we were last on broadcast.
Well, when we do decentralize it and when we don't have control of it, we're not able to tell some of the community stuff as well as we should and could. And that would be the biggest reason to take control of that narrative again and take control of that, so we can promote things like the affiliates a little more and our training program and the community. When we do let other people do it and just push it off to the side to let others tell our story, they're going to tell the game story.
Yeah.
But they're not going to, they have no interest or they have no reason to tell our affiliate side or support our training, and I totally get that. I totally understand. It's not in the morning chalk up doesn't need to be selling our seminars for us. You know, it'd be cool if they did, but they're not going to, right? I mean, the games content is really fresh and exciting to them, and so when you look at their stuff, it just seems like it's all games content, and that's what happens when someone like that's telling the story. They do some community stuff.
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Not a ton though, but it's again. If we want to sell seminars and sell affiliation or support the affiliate program, support the affiliate side, we're the best at doing it.
Yeah.
Through the games and through other sources of media.
Open participation has dropped the last 2% for a steady increase. How do you get the people back who said, I just don't feel like it was?
That's a great question. We just got to communicate with them. We've got to get them excited and make them want to be involved with us again. You know, the way the changes went down the past couple of years, it was confusing, and there was a lot of confusion out there. So it was, we've got to recapture some of the enthusiasm, and we've got to show them, hey, look. And I think we have, even with the last one, this last open we did, the number was low compared to the other years, but the enthusiasm and fun and the open itself, the people who did it seemed like everyone was loving it. I loved it. It was fun.
It was a great test.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the test.
The 5 weeks was a great 5 weeks, regardless of it being, you know, one of our lower opens in terms of participants in a long time.
Yeah.
And I think stuff like that. So my point there is even that lays the foundation for like, hey man, this is still fun.
Yeah.
You should do this next year.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of stuff. Regardless of all the changes or how things are different, it's still really fun. It's still cool to compare, and it's still cool to throw down and check in against your workmate, friend, classmate.
Yeah, totally. And I think you touched on something there with like the confusion, right? Because sometimes confusion can create dissent or can create uncertainty with people, and so, you know, they tend to pull back a little bit. And some of the confusion comes from how the season was laid out after the change and how it's continuing to evolve. So how do you think you can, you know, maybe CrossFit can use the open, the sanctioned events and the games to maybe, I don't know, clean up the system a little bit? Still not making it a massive overhaul, obviously, because we're in the system that we are, but maybe to kind of tidy things up a little bit and hopefully alleviate some of that confusion.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm not going to share those here.
Yeah. All right.
Let me ask you this. I feel like the sanctioned events are doing a good job of putting on events. From what you've seen from them, I don't know how much you have seen, what are your impressions on how they're presenting the competition side of things?
I literally don't know any of the events that I have not watched a single one. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know, I can't speak to any of the only programming I know of is this. I know of the rucksack because that was such a big, I'm sorry, not the rucksack, the biathlon.
Yeah.
The biathlon
At the Invitational.
at the Invitational, because so many people hit me up about that and that was just loud. And I know that one of them used a real rower, because that guy emailed me and said,
For Ollie, yeah.
and said, hey, I'd like to use a real rower. What do you think about it? And I said, I'm not a fan. I wouldn't go there, but you know, they can do whatever they want. I don't even know what the event was. But seriously, beyond that, I don't pay attention to these events at all. For me, this isn't my entertainment. Like, especially watching these other events, the events I'm in the CrossFit space that I'm really involved with are the ones that I am overseeing and am responsible for. So much of my life is CrossFit and has been for the last 12 years. With free time, I'm not watching more CrossFit.
Yeah.
So I need separation and I mean, if I started watching these events, it'd be swamped. I'd be watching so much more CrossFit than I need to. And oftentimes, in the past when I have looked at other people's events, I'm usually very critical of, and I don't want to look at these things with a critical eye, and
Yeah.
you know. But I hear people are very happy with them, so that's great.
Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges that you faced going into the games in 2019 from a programming standpoint, given the fact that the field exploded with athletes?
Well, yes, the larger field, and also the cuts was, you know, making it all work with the different numbers. So the huge challenges, and there was almost a reduction in people don't talk a lot about this, but there was overall less events than we typically do, just by a couple.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you don't hear a lot of talk about that, but that's one of the things. So not a lot of room to work with things, especially on the team side. There was a way reduction of events, and that wasn't by my choice. But so the numbers, the large numbers of athletes, that was fun to work with, and to do that first event, to program that first event for that. It was originally programmed at 225.
You know,
Been a lot of staring at barbells in the first.
Yeah.
you know.
And I had athletes test it, and the 225 version had reduced reps.
Oh, okay.
And,
Like 5 or 4
yeah,
or something
4,
like
it was
that.
4, and they finished it in the time cap. I mean, so here's the thing: for those top guys, that's a fine test. It's
Yeah.
okay with let's say 2 row climbs, 4 squat snatches at 225, running 400. That's a legitimate CrossFit Games test. For everyone else in the field, it's not. It's too much.
Yeah. And so now you talk about, you know, the cuts and having less team events, and we, especially with the movie coming out, and people have a little bit better, I don't know, 10,000-foot view of the games. In what areas can people look at and see that? Because I know Greg probably had more influence on the games this year, just wanting to be involved. And what aspects of the 2019 games can people say, like, maybe that was Greg Glassman's kind of stamp and that was his influence on the games?
I'm gonna get some water. Give me 1 second.
Intermission.
Oh.
I'm all by myself on YouTube. That was all by myself. I was watching. It's actually good break.
Thanks. He was heavily involved in.
Wait a minute.
Okay. The first test and just the overall concept and all the cuts, you know, the big picture vision of that was a lot of his direction, and you know, the cuts. Here's what's interesting about the cuts. It's a good time to talk about it. I've always been a huge fan of the cuts. In the 09 games here, we had big cuts after every event. I think it was 10 people were cut, and it kept going for the whole weekend till Sunday, when I think we had like 20 or 30 people left. Then later on, there was internal pressure to not cut as much forward, to keep people involved, which I kind of, like I say later on, when I say later on, I mean like, you know, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
There's points where we left the cuts because then there was discussions of scoring, how keeping everyone in, you know, affects the scoring, and all through all of this, even when we got to like the last 3 or 4 years of no cuts, I've always wanted to go back to cuts. So when he said he wanted these big cuts, I loved it. So I just made what we do work, or what we had worked with that. So I didn't choose the cuts, but I'm a huge supporter and fan of the cuts.
And in the doc, you mentioned at the end that like you're already processing and looking at ways to kind of improve. I mean, reflecting on the cuts and how things played out, is there anything that you think you could do better from the cuts perspective and how you manage the entire bulk of athletes at the 2019 games going forward to 2020?
Yeah, for sure, but some of that, if I talk about, would give away too much.
Okay.
You know, every one of those things is a learning opportunity, and every one of those things has its points that were not as good as others, and I learned from, we learned from as a team. But a lot of those, if I were to share, it's like, oh, bingo, you know, got it. And so a lot of those things, it's hard to share things. So some things I don't, a lot of things I don't.
People look at the structure of the games now, and with how aggressive the cuts are, and how you get down to 10 athletes by, I think it was the weekend.
Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Saturday after the morning, right?
Yeah.
There's a a perception that the games are now a competition where athletes get to express their fitness, but that it is not a test that determines who the fittest athletes are on the planet. And I'm guessing you disagree with that, and I want to know why.
Yeah, I do disagree with it. Here's the deal too. So largely that develops out of this notion that there wasn't a lifting event in the first 6 events, or there wasn't a test of strength. But even to go back to, hey, that first event, you have to be very strong to do well at that. Strength was tested in that first event. There was other subtle tests of strength throughout the events, to include even the sled push. I mean, we'll talk about that eventually, I imagine. But that's a strength type thing, that's power. And even the sprint, you know what, there's a lot of power involved in just doing that. I am not a huge fan, and these guys should know that through the open and everything else we do, in not testing 1 rep back strength until I've always said this, you got to earn the right to show us your 1 rep back strength. You got to earn the right to test it, especially at the games. And in the open, we do that by, gateways, by having an event first, and then in 5 minutes do the lift, or these workouts where you have to do a fuck ton of double unders and toe bars before you can get to the high weight, because we're not just looking for the strongest, we're looking for the fittest. At this stage too, so one of the points there is, well, why didn't you test 1 rep max strength earlier?
Or something similar,
Something similar. So many of these guys, especially when you get to the 40s and the 30s, are all of similar strength. Some of them, yes, are a little stronger than other, and it's all gonna net out almost the same anyways, in terms of so if we had 20 people go, yeah, you know what, let's say, I'll use Fikowski as an example. He might win the snatch if there was a snatch instead, because I know he has a big snatch. He might win the snatch instead of Frazier. But it's not like there's like all 10 of those guys who got left out are all so much stronger and would have been so much better on that test, and the wrong guys are there. The bottom line is the wrong guys, especially in my opinion, were not there. I mean, were there. Wrong guys were not. The right guys were there.
Okay. Yeah.
And here's another point to it. So we had 6 events to get you down to 10. That's an old regionals, meaning an old regionals had 6 tests, and we did 6 tests minus 1 of those tests didn't have a strength element. Arguably, it'd be great to look at. You guys might have. Let's say we replaced one of those with the strength test, and some of the same popular athletes, depending on the strength test, might not have even advanced. If we replaced, some of the guys who didn't make it, Fikowski and let's say Vellner, are not necessarily the strongest guys out there. Fikowski's close on the snatch overall.
Vellner's got a big clean. Yeah.
So,
same with Sager too. Some
there's
guys
a lot
that
of
were,
other guys, and there's probably a handful of people we don't even know in that 10 to 20 division who are just hosses and have really big numbers too.
Yeah.
It might not have changed the overall that much. But again, too, the other thing is, none of this would have been a discussion if Annie, Vellner, Fikowski, and let's say Brooke and Sarah advanced.
Yeah.
But you know what? Them not advancing makes this a talking point. Them not advancing is also not a surprise, because it's sport. And meaning there's still, in those 6 tests prior, you look at some of their scores, some of them punted it in the stands on certain events for whatever reason. Maybe not for their capacity, maybe for nerves, maybe because they did it at the in front of so many fans, but that's the sporting side of it. It's like when the Patriots were undefeated until they went and met the New York Giants in the Super Bowl, and I'm so glad they lost the Giants, and now the Dolphins are still the only undefeated team in history.
And you're a Dolphins fan.
And you know what? Nobody can argue that the Patriots weren't the best team that season until one game. And even like to talk to the Brooke and Vellner, step on the line.
Yeah.
That's sport. Hey, you know what? The dude takes the winning 3-point shot and he misses it by 1/10 of a second. He was slow, or he steps on the line and he's out of bounds. That's sport. That's the sporting end of it. Someone said to me recently, or I might have seen it in a comment, well, Vellner won the Open, but he didn't even make the top 10 at the games. Yeah, that's very true. And you know what? The Open and the games are very different. The Open is under your control completely. You do it when you want, you do it how you want, you do it as many times as you want. And at the games, these guys didn't even know what they were doing in a half an hour.
Yeah.
It's a totally different, that's the mental side of it too, at the games. It's a different level of competition. And that's why what Rich and Matt have done, and Tia and Annie, is really impressive, because they've performed at all levels, and at the games, even where there's all these different stressors, they're still performing at a high level.
So a couple follow-ups to that, because I mean, I do think a lot of people believe, and I'll say I'm one of them, that if you had switched some of the events, that it would have altered the top 10. Same with regard, you mentioned that some people punted it into the stands. So there's some people that equally punted it in the stands based on average finish and things like that. Things that used to be the gold standard, but got in because of the sequencing of the games. One, do you think that, because ultimately I think the fittest man, the fittest woman, the fittest team were found through the test. Do you think that takes the emphasis away from the leaderboard overall as finding the top 10 fittest, the top 20 fittest, and puts the emphasis more on just finding the fittest person? And two, if 6 events are good enough to find the 10 fittest, then why need 12? Well, why stop there?
Okay, to answer the question about, I've always said that we test the games, in my eyes, are to find the fittest alive man and woman. Team, important too, but not as important. And you know what? And there's casualties in that. And it happens that in this year, the casualties was not making it to the top 10, and that's fine. And it's, let me even play this out another way. Of course you can manipulate and change things, and you can get people in different places, and we could play that game all day long, and it's just, this is what it was in 19, and this is what you have. And it's fine. I love that you guys and others will play that game and manipulate things and argue about it, because that's what people should do. It's a sport. I can't waste my time, spend so much time in going down those paths, because it's counterproductive. Hey, yeah, you're right. Moving this to there, changing that to there, yeah, I'm not going to argue wouldn't change some people getting to the top 10, but again, I don't care as much about the some people. I care more about the overall, who wins and who's the fittest alive, and that was consistent. Hey, guess what? If Tia and Matt didn't make the top 10 this year, the fucking programming was wrong. You know what I mean? But they didn't, and they did what they needed to do, and they excelled on the events that they needed to excel on, and they made it, and they won. So I won't go down. I don't want to go down personally that route of too much of
Sure.
But don't think I won't look at the things in creating the next one and do some evaluation and self-evaluate. I'll do that, but I won't entertain discussing or bickering or going back and forth.
Yeah. You'll use it to improve, but you won't harp on it as.
Yeah. And I don't often view it as a fan either. That's the other thing too. I don't watch this, and that's another reason why I don't watch sanctional events. I don't even look at this as a fan when I'm looking at it. When I'm watching the event, if you see me on the floor, looking at the floor, I'm looking at athlete position, I'm looking at judge position, I'm looking at the gear doing the right stuff, I'm looking at the flow, I'm looking at the cameraman not being in the way. You guys know that? Yeah. I'm looking at all that other shit. I'm usually not watching the events as a fan. I'm looking at it from an organizational standpoint.
Let me put this another way. When you look at prior years, you look at the leaderboard and you look 1 through 40, and you know that guy's 37th, he's the 37th fittest person in the world. And the games in the past did a great job of laying everything out, because everybody took the same amount of tests, and everybody at the end, they knew exactly where they stood. Things have changed now to where it seems like it's more of a competition to find who the number 1 is, and that not everybody takes the same test. So this is no longer like a test to find all the fittest athletes. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with saying that. I just don't know why it's not being said. Like, the games have changed to being a competition.
I don't think it needs to be said. We didn't view it as like that. Meaning, we didn't view it as, okay, we're not as concerned with rank. Even when we were ranking over 40, that was not a concern at all. Meaning, I wasn't thinking, okay, cool, this is a really good opportunity to know who the 25th and the 35th and the 40th ranked person is. Again, even then, it was just this intense focus on determining who the fittest is alive. And even now it is that. And in this format, it's just a new format that leads to what you're saying. Interestingly, there are rankings still, but I get the point that they also didn't go through the same test that everybody else. So I don't know what did Dahmer to use? 16. So he has his ranking, but yes, he didn't do the rest of the test. And had he done the rest of the test, would it be different? Very likely, right? But but this is the sport of it. This was what was given to you. This is what you had to deal with, and this is the outcome. And but instill in all of that, Matt. No one can argue that Matt and Tia, and I'll even argue that Noah and the other females who were on the podium deserved to be there.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told me that before the competition started, that was your podium, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, that could be the podium if there was 40 athletes in the field at the end.
What about the fans? Because I think a lot of fans were disappointed that after 2 days of competition, a lot of their favorites, and again, their favorites need to perform. It is a sport, but they were a little disappointed that a lot of the people that they came to see compete were gone.
Yeah, I mean, again, to use the football analogy, people, when Tom Brady's not in the Super Bowl, everyone in Boston is pissed off.
The rest of the country, though.
Yeah, exactly. that again is sport, and it's like, man, we're not creating an event just for the fans. There's the visuals and the experience. There's a lot of that's taking into consideration for the fans. But I mean, it's almost like outcome manipulation. And I know you're not suggesting that, but like, man, we gotta make sure that the big names are in the top 10, so the fans are happy. That definitely is not happening.
Right.
You know what? Like, that is not at all the goal. So, and guess what, fans? There's still some really big names in the top 10 on each side.
Absolutely. So
cheer for someone else. Your person had. We start on Thursday, Friday, and likely Saturday morning. Your person had 3 days of competing and competition floor time for you to take in.
Yeah, is it safe to say then that there was a problem with expectations? Like fans came in thinking that.
I'd go there. I would go there.
You know, I mean, like there wasn't that the expectations weren't set from the beginning.
Okay.
And they didn't know what was happening. You know, I think a lot of people expected that the best athlete, and I'm not saying the best didn't, but when you say best, that's also synonymous with sometimes well known.
Yep.
Didn't make it, so people were a little bit shocked by that. So that now that expectations have been set, maybe you don't have that problem moving forward.
But some of the people who didn't make it haven't always performed at the top level of the games. Meaning, like you look at Brooke. She's had finishes outside the top 10, right?
Yeah.
You look at even Sarah. She's I don't know if outside the top 10.
Well, she withdrew one time because she got hurt because she cracked her rib, and then she's had other kind of various kind of letdowns from a public eye.
Annie, I know, is finished outside the top 10.
Yeah.
So that even puts it into context. Hey, it's not even unusual, even when we have all the tests. I don't think actually Vellner's finished outside the top 10. Fikowski for sure has.
No, he was 4.24 in his 3 years. Vellner was 3.32.
Okay.
So I think
those two. Okay, so for the girls on that side, so my point there is they've even had years where they weren't in the top 10. So it's almost consistent. Those two are outliers in that model, in that example that I just used.
And I think some of that, and to kind of touch on the expectations things, two of the things that I think Brent and Pat really excel at is they typically get stronger as the weekend goes on. Their recovery, their load management, I guess, from an energy perspective, and how they're able to kind of attack towards the end lends itself to event wins and strong performances. Chaos for Pat, the rope triplet for Brent back in the day, and StubHub. So I think that kind of almost took a tool out of their bag with the cuts, I think, and maybe it's a change in expectations. Last year kind of felt like a perfect storm where everybody was still processing the cuts announcements the week before the games. So I think it's tough because.
I just fall back to, especially those two, you should have put the work in. And I don't mean the work as in terms of being ready, but the work in the actual leaderboard on those first six events.
Yeah.
You look at Fikowski, he made some mental mistakes that really cost him a lot of points. Vellner did the same thing. Like, there was plenty of opportunity in those 6 events. Frazier tanked the sprint, but he had enough built up. He had enough foundation built up and enough consistency to advance.
Yeah.
And I don't have sympathy for that because I feel like they had plenty of opportunity, especially those guys, Vellner and Fikowski, who have finished top at the games every year, to lay the foundation to make it to the next stage.
Speaking of Frazier, there was, and I haven't seen it yet, but I know there's some talk in the documentary that just came out from the Buttery Bros, the fittest, about why his 1 minute penalty in the ruck, why that was decided on, and why that was deemed appropriate. So why was that appropriate?
The the ruck fell out, or not the ruck, the sandbag fell out as he was rounding the corner, and he came across the finish line. Some of the team wanted to administer a much harsher penalty. Now here's the reality. Nothing was briefed in terms of that scenario.
Okay.
Had something been briefed in terms of that scenario, we would have stuck by what was briefed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Period. And what I just said there is what happened on the sprint.
Yeah.
So, hey, you know what? Fucking right or wrong, it was briefed. If you step on the line, not for the teams, for the individuals, because there was some confused people were like, well, for the teams, they didn't say. Guess what? It's two different comps.
Yep.
Right.
Two different head judges briefing two different events. Different. Chuck briefed one thing, which is fine, and we followed that for the teams, and for the individuals, another thing was briefed. And that's what that led to. If you step on the line, you get that penalty, which was for some weekend ending. For the ruck, it wasn't. There wasn't a penalty that was briefed for if you drop a bag out of your bag. You know, we didn't think.
Yeah.
Sorry, we didn't think that was going to
Everyone's
happen.
gonna zip up their ruck. Like,
Yeah.
So then some of the senior members on our team started discussing what the penalty should be, and a lot of people thought it was intentional. When he looked back, he saw it, and he just kept running, and they were like suggesting a really stiff, I think it was 4 or 5 minutes, something big. They did some math, it's like basically, and it did. I didn't agree with it, and I've rucked a lot through my military time, and even recently I've been rucking for other competitions I do, shooting competitions, and I know when you're going, a 10-pound, especially these guys as fast as they're moving, something like a 10-pound pack falling out, you're not necessarily gonna feel and be like, wow, this is real lighter, this is so much lighter. I kind of recognize that from my own experience with rucking. And I thought the penalty that our team, understand this, it's arbitrary. It's a number that we're picking out of just the air was too harsh. And I said, no, that's not right. Let's relook at this and come up with a new penalty because again, nothing was briefed, so we had to come up with something.
Yeah.
I think something should have been applied.
Yeah.
And so we chose the time we did. And Matt was really upset by it. And I actually told him, I said, hey dude, you're actually really lucky. Because the other penalty some of our team was suggesting was much stiffer.
Yeah.
And here's the reality of it. Those types of decisions are made on so many different events the entire weekend in similar situations. This one was high profile because it was Matt, and what's crazy is the camera caught it right at that moment. I mean, there's a lot of cameras, but there's not a lot of cameras. Like, there's plenty of opportunity on that field where something like that could happen and nobody would see it.
Yeah.
But the camera caught it at the right moment, and it was.
I mean, you can see in the video that it falls right behind that like orange support sandbag, and I mean, in my opinion, the video kind of was attested to the fact that like he's running, it followed, he looked back, saw an orange bag, kept going.
The look back is the part that a lot of people are in disagreement because a lot of people are saying the look back is acknowledgement that he saw it. I say it's not. Some people say it is. That's all opinion right there. He says he didn't, and I believe him.
Yeah.
I take his side on that in terms. And we didn't talk to him pre this. We didn't consult him and say this is what's going on.
Yeah.
But,
and decisions like I think you touched on it too. I mean, decisions like this have to happen, you know, in that manner. Sometimes you look back at when Cara and Tia were in that tight battle at the games, and Cara miscounted reps, and they went back and they had to, you know, create this.
Interestingly, on stuff like for miscounted reps in situations like that, we have more protocol in place where we look at the time finished and the amount of time it takes for rep than we do on something like this. Because this was frankly like an outlier event. We don't do an event like this often.
But even then, it wasn't like, oh, you miscounted your reps 5 minutes. You know, there was still a system to determine and, you know, weigh in the things. And I think that's, you know, something that maybe not a lot of people know for sure.
Let's talk about that, the sprint couple with the sled,
Yeah.
because that's been a topic of conversation. Some people have put together numbers that suggest that the outside lanes did have a little bit of an advantage. What's wrong with saying, yeah, maybe that happened, but at the end of the day, it is on the athletes to perform regardless of what conditions or problems they're dealing with?
Because that data those guys put together is junk. And here's why it's junk. That data would only be valid in this regard if the event was a down, done, or a down and back of just one modality, the sled.
Okay.
What that data that they put together takes into zero account, it takes total time and finish, But there was a minute, almost a minute, not a minute, about 50 seconds of work in the middle of this event. You leave the sled, you have a transition period, you go to the bar and you do muscle ups, and then you come back. Now, interestingly, those muscle ups were, even in programming, when I made this test, I said, this is a test of muscle ups. And if you look at the footage, that was a test of cycle speed and transition on the muscle ups. The guy who won, McLeod, and Olsen, when you look at their speed on the muscle ups, they were cranking them out. That guy's data, here's where that data could be more legit, is if you took it from the very first sled, from the start and to when each athlete crossed the line, because that right there is a representation of just a pure sled effort, and the variance will say in the field. But the way he did it is so misleading for this narrative. It creates this narrative of lanes having an advantage. No, it wasn't the fucking lane. It was those guys, their work on the muscle ups. And it was interesting, Matt and I were going back and forth last night. And Matt says, well, everybody did the muscle ups unbroken. I go, that doesn't matter. Everyone did do them unbroken, but with much different tempo and speed. Some people can do 18 muscle ups unbroken faster than others, and also then in the transition just between the, I consider 2 points of transition. Off the sled to the bar is one. And if you look, I'll show you soon. If you look, Noah was fucking on it.
Right.
He was just on the bar right away, and he was cranking, and then he was off the bar right away. Those little things add up. And here's what I mean. I got it pulled up. Here's what I mean by, this is the type of thing he should measure and graph out. So, boom, go. Okay, so that guy had a hiccup. Look, there's some variance here, there for sure is. Dude, what? That's natural athletic variance. In any race, there's going to be some variance. Watch, there's some guys in the middle, in the front too. How about you graph out, let's stop here. How about you graph out this finish, because that's the only thing when conditions were completely the same on the sled. And interestingly, at this moment, everybody comes in a couple seconds relative to each other. Everybody at this stage, unless maybe it's just one directional that the issue was. Maybe the field was skewed one directional. But hear me out. At this stage, everyone crosses within a couple of seconds. The difference on this event.
For every line they pass with that sled.
So 21 seconds, everyone's across. Some people are already working, and this is what it came down to. Now watch, and here's a guy on the left who was on a good lane who was really far behind.
Ryan Sauer.
You can even just look in here, you can see difference in speed in cycling. So now, is this first? Yeah, McLeod's gonna get off first, and he's gonna have a significant lead on his sled before even anybody gets off. And again, that's not because of the conditions of the field at this point. They all came in within a second or two of each other from that first sled. That's because of the work he puts in here. And I contend everyone who's saying there's, I actually texted Noah this last night, everyone who's saying that there's sections that were good, you're fucking shitting on these guys who did great. You're shitting on McLeod and you're shitting on Olsen, because those guys put in some serious work and a great effort. So, play this out.
This was his break from the sled.
He's got a nice lead.
When it comes down to break here, you got to think if you're going to win this event or even have a chance of finishing inside the top 10. I'll say shut this guy up.
And here we go. Watch, he's off and he's on. He spins.
Outdueled Matt Fraser in one of the bi-couple events, and
And
now
at this stage,
athletes are off.
these middle guys, they're not, a lot of them, a couple aren't even on the sled.
Yeah.
And he's out. And what he has an athlete advantage in terms of being in front, and he's gonna really fucking push his ass off. And these guys, they're moving too. But you know what? They just started a lot further behind than he did. And when you're this guy, you know what else? You see everyone in front of you. And what do you do at that point? You're not moving like some of these other guys. You're just kind of like,
Yeah.
well, I'm still in it, but I'm not going to win.
Well, some of the people who voice concerns, I would consider them whiners, or people who traditionally bitch about where they finish.
I'm almost saying this more for the fans too.
Where is that perception coming from? Is it purely fan driven?
No, it's coming from athletes too, because athletes have said some of this stuff. Interestingly, I said this in my post. As soon as this event was over and I went in to brief the next one, I heard a couple guys starting insinuating that the surface was different, and I was blown away by it. And I was like, no, how could none of this? We tested, and this is another test. We tested a lot.
Uh-huh. Well, I think there's a few things, and I think this goes to the whole like favorites not making the top 10, and this as well is we build these expectations typically based off performance, right? Some of these fan favorites become fan favorites because they're in the top 10, because as a result of their exposure in the top 10, we get to see their personality, things like that. And in the same regard, you know, we're used to seeing, and we see it played out in gyms and multiple different surfaces. Certain athletes should be able to push a sled way better than other athletes.
Should be able to. You can make that assumption because they're your favorite, not yours.
Well, no,
because your favorite in a big name. But guess what, guys? And I've always said, you know, Matt Fraser's hard work pays off. It's great. It's a great thing. But guess what? He's not the only guy who works hard and puts a lot of time in. And the most popular and famous people aren't the only ones who work hard and put a lot of time in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these other guys like McLeod. Hey, so McLeod finished this event in first. He finished what in the games? 8.
Yeah.
I think it was 8. Noah finished second in this event. He finished what in the games? Second. I think Will Murad was third in this event.
Yeah.
Top 10. So even those guys who were on the top of this event, but there's other variables in this one too. I want to show you something.
Well, one thing I want to bring up before we finish looking at this is, and I had heard rumblings of it before, but it was apparent in a couple of shots in the fittest that I saw it more frequently, is those fans. The fans that were pumping moisture out onto the field. And there were a couple of shots.
There's nothing there. And here's why. I'm going to show you. Here's why there's nothing there. Because again, it fundamentally goes to this. This first push tells the entire story. Someone said, well, I was pushing much harder and he had an easier push. These fucking guys are all so good. If you were pushing much harder but still maintaining the speed of everyone else, that's not the case. If it was much easier, they'd be way in front. Now there's going to be one person here, interestingly too, Noah was wearing cleats, which might have been a huge advantage.
I did see that, yeah.
Where others were not. Matt wasn't wearing cleats. And then there's another factor taken in there where, what's his name? He's a big dude. You'll see in a second. He just had a really high position and he might have maximized, he might have found the sweet spot where it lessened the load on the sled and kind of gained some mechanical advantage, but that had nothing to do with the surface watch. You'll see in a second. And even him doing that, it wasn't like he was further, but no more than what would be the accepted norms. In an event like this, there's going to be separation. And let's watch this.
Inside the top 10. He's hoping to continue his
And the truth is, maybe these guys, some of these guys who didn't perform as well as everyone wants, didn't put in the sled work or oh, and here's the thing.
Yeah, a couple of people popped it off
Yeah,
the top
right
and
there, right
dug
there
it
at
right
the
to the
start.
ground.
Yeah.
Matt lost a good 2 seconds because he nosed dived. Now check this out. Not because of the surface, but because he hit it too high and nose dived. I want you to see, he's in the back now. Matt makes up a ton of ground and he almost makes it back to the front. Bear in mind, in a bad lane, in the traditional sense. So he's in the back, and look, he's starting to catch everybody. And even all of this right now. So this is guys, is that Quan?
Quan, yeah, I think so.
So look how high he's pushing. He might have found an advantage based off of his size, not even knowing.
I remember Neil Maddox on the sprint slam did the same thing, kind of picked it up. And
You
kept it
say
close.
that
Yeah.
in one of these.
Yeah.
Or someone said it. Chase might have said
Probably
it.
Chase.
Yeah.
He's the smart one.
So that is, I contend, is not because of surface. That is because of mechanical advantage. He might have shoes, or he might have cleats. I don't know. Everyone else is in a pretty, very similar place within fractions of a second.
So you would contend this is the natural variance allowed with the little nuances and stuff that go in.
This is what someone like whoever that guy is who graphed that out should graph out. He should not graph out the total time because the total time again, so this is going to take less than 20 seconds for everyone. the second half of muscle, the muscle-ups will take about a minute, and then the push back will vary for a lot of guys. It disregards what happens in the middle. It doesn't even take into account. You can't. And look here. Let's look here. Guys on the left, a guy on the left in the front, a guy on the left in the back. Some guys in the middle, in the front. Hey, and look, Chandler Smith, he crushes this. He's in the top 5. He'll end up being in the back. Noah, this is what's important to remember. Both of these guys do cross first, and they're gonna put some significant work in on that. And look at the ground Matt made up. He's more in the middle of the pack.
3 seconds.
Now watch Noah.
And I want to say at the very bottom,
He's up.
that might have been Brent
And
Fikowski.
he's working. And he's working.
So
And so these guys.
first to the ring, and what
So
he did was
the important
he
thing,
used
my
that
point
slight
here,
push technique
this
to
is
steal
this
at the
is
very
the
bottom
data.
of
This
the field
here
right now. But he's
is the only thing that's consistent to measure, to give any weight to this notion of the lane might have been a fast lane or not. And this data still might show, this is going to show these two had the fast times, but guess what? Try telling me that Noah Olson's not capable of that, or Samuel Quant. Try saying that that's just fucked up to the athlete, I believe. Well, they got lucky, they were in a fast lane. No, how about they're that good? And again, Noah's wearing cleats, which that's another
I
variable.
can't imagine that people not wearing cleats for this. Why? I just assumed everybody was.
Maybe access.
Okay.
Maybe because we didn't, the shoes were on
They were,
athletes.
okay. That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
He's wearing some Nike football cleats.
Yeah.
And so maybe you just had them in your bags and others didn't.
Interesting. But and it
So my contention is that guy's data is trash because it's taking into account the whole event and assigning that these lanes have fast lanes or not. The only way it would work is if this was a single modality test that was just a sled down and a sled back.
Brian.
Yeah, you're up.
Brian, you're up, man. It's interesting though because I think
He should be embarrassed. He should be embarrassed by that.
Now you're just poking. Now you're just poking.
the smile on your face tells you that you're poking the bear here. But I think it's interesting though because I feel like people will contend that in a workout where seconds make a huge difference here because of the speed of it, that even a small variance, maybe a 3 to 5 second variance in the sleds. So say. And this may be tapping into a little bit too much of a looking backwards and not learning from it and going forward because a 4 to 5 second difference, if there is a variance, say 2.5 seconds each direction, is 10 spots on the leaderboard.
But that's okay. That's the nature of a sprint event, meaning that's just part of this game. And it's just part of the sprint. If we were to just fall slave to those type of things, we wouldn't have tests like this. And tests like this are absolutely necessary. Tests where you can make a mistake, where you can nosedive.
Yeah.
This might have been Matt's lowest finish. And you know what?
Yeah. I think the actual sprint might have been, but
Yeah, 15th in the actual sprint.
Yeah.
The rock was, wasn't it?
No, at 7th or 8th in the row?
17th.
really? Okay.
17th.
Oh,
But the
17th?
sprint couplet was his worst. It was 21st.
Is this an issue if there were cuts? I mean, if there weren't cuts? Do you think
It's
you're
not.
hearing
It's not a talked about issue.
That's what I meant, yeah.
No, not at all. And again, it's not an issue if Fikowski, Vellner, Brooke, Andy didn't get cut.
Mm-hmm.
If Noah got cut, it wouldn't be an issue. There's fan favorites. There's some people fans really like. People like Noah too. Don't get me wrong. but some of these now. What I want you to see something when we're on Fraser now. What you don't see and will pan is Noah's already fucking 40 feet down the field. Look, and that's not because of the sled being easier to push. It's because he has a nice lead. Boom. So one of these lanes is 44 feet. So here's Noah, and here's Matt. And then here's Quant down here, so Noah's in cleats. Quant has, I think, an ideal advantage in pushing position. And even all that being said, this distance isn't going to increase that much. Matt dug it again. But that also doesn't mean it was the surface. So look, they're still moving, they're still clipping out. And again, I also pretend these guys in the front have another level because like, I'm in the front, I'm gonna fucking win.
Yeah, there's a
There's a
that
drive,
lead, yeah.
and that guy's data takes none of that into consideration. Now here, these guys are all still moving at a good clip, and why are they here? They're here not because of the centered lanes. They're here because of what happened on the muscle up bar, and that's how this event was designed. This event was designed that it was going to be a test of speed on the muscle up bar, and this stuff was a distraction. It obviously did play. It obviously was a contributor. Now you look and there's going to be some guys in the middle, in the back, and there's going to be some guys in the left and right. But at this stage, I contend there's not a loser mentality, but there's a, well, fuck. And there's Chandler who was in the front. He was in the front on the way back. Look at, and here's a guy in a fast lane. Here's a guy in a fast lane. They're in the back. I contend these guys are a little less like, fuck, they see everybody, so they slow up a little more.
Yeah, the demoralization factor a little bit.
Yeah, look, there's some more guys.
Now that athletes have been through this whole system once,
Yes.
they didn't know what to expect in 2019. They know what to expect the next time around. What are the lessons that you expect them to learn, and not only learn, but then now apply to the next game?
Yes, exactly. The next game is the proper way to say it. Prepare for the unknown and unknowable. Take that to heart and understand like you have to show up on every event. If we continue in this direction with these same cuts, with the same format, you can't have a bad event. And that, again, what is that? That's sport. And,
Sure.
and I believe heavily in that. That's part of all of this. It's necessary. It's this sport now. It's where it is right now, and that's part of it. You got to adapt to that and understand. And for the fans, they should understand, hey, guess what? Now I know going in, my superstar fucking 1.5 million follower stud athlete with a great body might not be in the top 10.
Yeah.
They need to understand that as fans.
So, kind of touching on that with the games and the changes, I think it was already announced that this year would maybe follow an every second counts format for something, at least in the beginning. It was talked about, there was a couple of interviews. Has there been any development? And you don't necessarily have to give anything away, but how far along are you in the programming process for some of these events in the first? Because
I'm very far along until this happened. It kind of set. I was cranking and working, and then the fucking coronavirus, and it kind of just like, okay, I need to slow down. I'm still thinking and doing some work, but less work, just because it's not looking good in terms of happening, right? So.
But you had some games, workouts, okay.
Way further than in the past.
Oh.
So meaning in the past, where are we? We're in
March.
Okay.
End of March.
We'd be finishing the Open right now, right?
Yeah.
I'd be heavy in the regionals, programming the regionals right now. Finish the regionals in the next couple weeks, and then I'd dive heavy into the games. So that even in the past month and a half or 2 months that I've already took the dive into the games because of the new format changes, that's way further than it has been in the past, further forward.
2019 was the first year that I can remember where we didn't have some sort of new piece of equipment that was unveiled or some sort of this thing that was constructed specifically for the games. Are those days now behind us where we're not going to see, just based on the scope of athletes that you have to bring to the games?
That's a great
you can't do that
question.
anymore?
It's not about the scope of the athletes, it's about the number of tests available. So basically there's a point where it's like, okay, there's some things we need to test, and some of those outlier things and new equipment are fun or good or nice to have or cool to do or
but not necessary.
Not necessary. Yeah. And I felt with kind of almost a reduced event number format, we kind of need to focus a little more on more core things and then bringing in new equipment.
Right.
So the new equipment, those days aren't done either.
Yeah. I don't even know if you're in this department or if this is something you even have a hand in, but something I was thinking about is that if the games don't take place this year, this was supposed to be the last year of Reebok being the title sponsor. Well, if that doesn't happen, how does that affect the deal moving forward?
There's a lot of there's a lot of discussion on all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because not ready to talk about
Right.
it.
For sure. And just to kind of clarify what Sean's talking about, there's been discussion. I mean, I think from the media side, if it was a 10 games deal or if it was a 10-year deal is an interesting distinction. Time frame versus event. Yeah. So Your
You guys think
expression,
of everything.
yeah, we're trying to do doing our job the best we can, but maybe kind of looking at the future as well, because the games are going to be in Madison, and I think maybe one more year, and there's potential for extensions as well. But maybe in the not so distant or distant future, can you see the games being held outside of the United States?
So I have really strong feelings and thoughts on that I also not ready to share.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you see, how do you see the games evolving now over the next, 3-4 years?
Patience.
That's a big question.
That's another one. So here's the thing with this format too, with podcasts and interviews, and one reason why I've not done podcasts for
Yeah.
a long time is there's just a lot of things that shouldn't be talked about or said by individuals who are involved in a company or have
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
And I think oftentimes people talk too freely on podcasts, and I'm definitely not that guy. So
Yeah.
meaning I can say I have a lot of thoughts on that too, but I just can't talk about.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about.
Right.
it.
Well, sometimes the best answer is that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's
That,
weird.
that just because I'm not answering doesn't mean.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure, sure.
And there's a company line.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think there's a recognized delineation between, like on the media side, it's our task to ask these questions,
Yeah, oh
but
yeah,
at the
for
same
sure.
time, we can't expect to get an answer,
Yes.
and that's the both sides of it. But another question that kind of came up, and this is actually from the Beard of Knowledge,
Okay.
Chad Schroeder. He wanted me to ask, how long do you plan on continuing to be the games director? Is that something that's in your mind somewhere? And have you ever given any thought to who a good successor might be?
Those are both good questions, challenging questions. For the near-term future, for sure.
Yeah,
And to the next question, not much thought.
yeah,
Yep.
What do you enjoy most about this?
The process, just going through it, planning all these things. When I was living in San Diego, we had a testing facility. I test there. Here, I test here, and taking athletes and bringing them here and having them test something just in this shed, and then putting it out and having athletes do it and seeing it done on a field of play in front of thousands of people, streamed, to thousands of other people watching online, and just seeing it all come together. That whole process is really unique. And then the end of the games for me is always really emotional because it's just like it's all done. And not emotional. I'm not sitting there crying, but just like watch how I say that. But just like it's a emotional release. Just like, again, that's a weird way of saying it, but just like
Right.
yeah,
it's over, right? And a lot of time goes into this, a lot of effort, and I chronicle a lot of that in my book, and just like the process and the thought and the time that does go into putting this event on. It's like you guys said in the beginning, it's not just throw a couple workouts together and do it. Like a lot of this stuff has gone through iteration, and so the process for me is the
Yeah.
best part, and seeing it all come together in Madison.
yeah. I mean, we feel that same kind of emotional release too, because it's such this big, slow build, and it's such a hard, finite end, right?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden it's Sunday at the games, there's one event left, and you're like, oh man, that was, a year, 2 years, 3 years worth of work that just finished up. But when you kind of think back now, because we're in year 14 of the games now,
Yep.
is what really like if there's, and I hate to use the word proud, but is there anything in particular that you're proud of, or things that you look back when you evaluate that process and you're like, man, that's really cool, I'm really happy with how this went, or even maybe this is something that I didn't expect but is pleasantly surprising?
It's really cool to see some of the life-changing events that athletes are able to launch from off of this. Meaning like Froning and Frazier and Tia and a lot of other athletes that are not as well known as them, but that have made this their life and their career and made a good living off of it. That was never our intent, or that was never the goal. And then from that angle to see how those professional athletes can then inspire thousands, if not millions, of other CrossFitters. Like it or not, CrossFitters and CrossFit gyms are inspired by our CrossFit athletes, just like you and I were inspired by Michael Jordan and Joe Montana.
Yeah.
You know, CrossFitters now, and
I'm a
not me either. Dan Marino. Dan Marino.
I'm a Cowboys fan. Joe broke my heart.
So seeing that spectrum, how we put on this event where these guys are superstars and professional athletes, and they affect and motivate the common CrossFit gym goer, who, interestingly enough, because of the nature of the program, can also do a lot of the same workouts that these guys do, and that's all expressed in frankly, the open.
Yeah.
And so seeing all that and how that's grown, and it's a full circle, has been really neat to be part of and just watch it grow.
Yeah. What about your training? We talked a little bit before. Like, what's your training like? What have you been up to? Because I know you're doing some ruck training, some sniper training and stuff.
I do. So I shoot a lot. I shoot every day pretty much because I have a nice range here. But for actually working out, I'm on 3-on, 1-off. I'm diehard 3-on, 1-off, and I just program for myself. And I do CrossFit workouts. And when I run a lot, it's this. It's like 3-on, 1-off, 3-on, 1-off. But one in those 6 is a run. When I'm rucking, it's pretty much the same, 3-on, 1-off, 3-on, one of those 6 is a ruck. And I use that kind of cycle. I'm focusing on deadlifting right now. Same sort of thing, in that 6, one of those workouts is a deadlift. And I'm really hardcore old school in that just one event a day.
Yeah.
One thing. And it's plus because I'm old now. Too many people, that was one of the negative influences of the games and the format in the beginning, is athletes or people seeing how often and how much athletes train, thinking they need to replicate that.
Yeah.
Not few, but you've got to be at the right age, at the right development of you have the right foundation before you start doing multiple things a day.
Yeah.
And most of the people who are doing multiple things a day built up to that.
Yeah. They don't see the process in between to get to that point. You did the was it Mountain Sniper Challenge?
Mammoth Sniper Challenge.
Mammoth Sniper Challenge. I think a lot of people at home were excited to watch you compete. Actually.
Yeah.
And, you
I
know,
got cut.
Yeah. And a pretty.
Was it the rifle's fault, Dave?
How appropriate, yes, exactly. How appropriate. Yeah. My partner dropped his pistol, and it was a pair competition, and in a competition like that, if your gun hits the ground, basically you're out. And in this event, in this stage, I went to the left and shot from a barrel. He went to the right and shot from another barrel that was dug in the ground. And when he ran over there, he took his pack off and it pulled his pistol out, and his pistol fell on the ground. And after we finished shooting, they came up and said, "Hey, you guys are done." This was 3 hours into a 3-day competition that I trained for the last year, and and I said, "Okay, that's fine." And my partner was devastated and apologized. I'm like, "Hey, this happens. It's not a big deal." So it really wasn't a big deal. I really wanted to have finished, but it's sport. It's sport. It's not a big deal. Hey, even to these athletes who get cut, I get it. You trained all year. This is your livelihood. It's still not a big deal. I always go back to, hey, I'm not getting shot at anymore.
Yeah,
You know what I
used
mean?
to say that a lot.
Yeah, I'm not getting shot at. This is nothing. No matter how hard it gets, I don't have someone who wants to kill me on the other side. I'm not looking across it. So
Yeah. And are you planning on maybe rerunning it back?
yeah, we're for sure.
Yeah.
I don't like leaving any stone unturned. We're redoing it this year. So right now I'm not training as hard for it. I'm doing some pistol competitions and training for that. So pretty soon I'll start rucking a lot more and shooting my sniper rifle a lot more.
Is that, do you feel like the shooting sports and kind of diving into those aspects, especially after your military career, is kind of parallel to CrossFit in terms of like that personal release? We talked about running too, that thought, almost like meditative or therapeutic type release for you that makes you efficient.
For sure, and it keeps me, here's the thing, you need to step away from the things that you do the most, especially work things. Everyone does. You need to have outlets. I can't be, and that's another reason why I don't watch a lot of these events. I can't just live this 24/7 or I'll just burn out. Shooting's a nice step away and a nice outlet, and something for me to focus on intently and take away focus from this, and keeps you fresh when you go back and forth.
Yeah.
What is something about you that people don't know that they might be surprised to find out?
Something about me that people don't know that might be surprised. I want to run something else first. And
Okay.
then
All right, here we go.
because we sound like we're wrapping up, but we're not.
No.
this whole notion that the first 4 of the 6 events were running events,
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
We're done.
Yeah, let's do it.
that's bullshit too.
Okay.
And I'm gonna prove to you why. You and I are really good runners. You're fitter than I am. But if we were to do all those tests, we'd perform very differently in each one. Yes, they had some running in them, but you know, everything we do is bipedal. You're gonna be on your feet for a lot of these things, and that's just the nature of it. But the type of running in each thing was very different. And here's what's gonna prove that to you.
Okay.
First cut, Fraser was first. Run event by this notion.
Yeah.
Ruck, Fraser was 17th. And then a little of that plays
After
into
the
the
penalty, right,
penalty. So
sure.
maybe he really finished like
6th, I think, was his
Okay.
original finish. Yeah.
sprint couplet, 21st. Run event, 21st. The sprint, 15th. So average placing on all those run events was 13.5. And he's a great traditional runner.
Yeah.
But when you put the load on his back, there were some other guys, bigger guys, who were able to finish faster than him. We've had pure runs where Fraser's won. This wasn't a pure run. This had the ruck. And I did this with each event winner in these running events.
Yeah.
The ruck winner. So again, in another run event, he finished 39th. That's because these are all very different tests.
Yeah.
In the sprint couplet, he finished 15th. And in the sprint, he finished 16th. Matt McLeod, who took first in the sprint couplet, 40th on the first cut, 18th on the ruck, 4 on the sprint. These two are similar. Yeah, that's interesting. And they are of similar in time for. They're both sprinty. Yeah. You know, Saxon 20, 46, 8, and 1. Now, who's the fastest running female on the female side? Like traditional.
Like length, distance or sprint?
Yeah, distance.
Probably Tia
Or
Christy Aramo.
She wasn't an individual.
Sam Briggs.
Yeah, Sam is good.
Aramo wasn't an individual this year. Was she?
No, she
Yeah,
was
Tia
Tia.
is traditional,
Yeah.
and Sam Briggs is.
Yeah.
So Sam Briggs, by this notion, if there was so many running events, she should have had no issue advancing. Let's take a look at Sam's.
I like this.
Somebody came prepared.
But this is something people don't know about me.
Yeah.
How much
There you
I
go,
like.
perfect. I like
This is something people
I didn't
don't
know this
about
about
me.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dive in when I need to. I look at numbers and I look at data all the time for my cause or for what I'm studying or for what I'm creating
Yeah.
to figure things out. 8th on the first run event, 4 on the ruck, 24 on the sled, and 19th on the sprint.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if this was there was that much bias towards running for a runner, someone like her, these numbers would have all been really high.
Yeah.
But they were all very different tests. Yes, they had something,
Some similar elements.
some similar element. Yeah, yes, you're running on a ruck. But as people who ruck know, rucking and running are different in that you take really fast runners and you put 50 pounds on their back, and
Very
that
fast they
changes
work. Yeah.
things. Yeah. And guess what? Who won that? Hogberg?
Hogberg, yeah.
Who's a massive dude with 50 pounds on his back, has a nice advantage over someone like Matt or Noah Olson,
Right.
who's probably
Because it's a
fast.
greater percentage of their body.
Yeah,
weight, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's a loaded event. That's loaded in terms of weight. And same thing with the sled. Yeah, you're running, but try telling me that driving a sled across the field is in the sense of the 4 out of the 6 events were running event. It obviously doesn't favor runners. Now Tia's data is interesting because her overall average across those is 4.5, but Tia's also the best in the
Like
world.
yours.
She's also considered a great distance and sprinter. She's
Yes.
she's a
Yeah,
unicorn
so
in that
she's
regard.
she's an outlier, I think, in all of this data.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, what else you got in there?
I was gonna
So I just came, those are the 2 things I hear the most about, so I just came prepared to talk about those.
But
That's it.
yeah, but I mean, what
And I
things?
do this on the seminar side too, like with financials and with our courses and with I dive into numbers.
Yeah.
I'm not outwardly a number guy, but I like to work
Yeah.
around and dive into stuff and really look at. It's not that I'm a numbers guy. It's that I pay attention and notice things with numbers.
Yeah, the trends and things like that. Maybe on the flip side of this, getting away from the things that were, in quotes, controversial and things like that. What things do you think you look back on the 2019 games? You're like, man, we knocked that one out of the park. That one was good, and I can build off of that.
Interestingly, Mary.
Really?
Yeah, and here's why. From a test perspective, I think it was great, even though I know others don't. And from a visual, so when was the last time, you guys probably know this, I know this, but when was the last time we did an AMRAP at the game?
Yeah, I don't think
2011 was it the end?
It might have,
Yeah.
I thought it was here, but you might be right,
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, it was the end. That was it.
It was the end was like 8 minutes, finish the chipper. It was technically, yeah.
So semi, but not
Semi, yeah.
pure,
Pure
where it
impact,
just
yeah.
ends. And so that was a big gamble in terms of the visual and in terms of, so when creating, you have the test, you have the visual, you have the test and the visual fan experience. In terms of fan experience and visual, doing something like that was a huge gamble. And I was like, yeah, I want to take it this year and I want to see. And try telling me the energy wasn't through the roof when Matt and Noah were racing at the end. And I thought it ended great. So I thought that, I think Vellner tried saying somewhere that it wasn't a great event for the fans, but that's wrong, completely wrong. It turned out to be a great event. And the clean.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was awesome.
but here's the thing: those are almost cheating. What I mean by that, okay, I'm gonna make an event for.
Throw a home run derby.
Yeah,
That was
exactly.
it.
I'm gonna throw a heavy clean
Yeah.
where just one athlete's lifting in the center of the floor. That's like a soft pitch.
Right.
You know? It's too easy.
Is there,
Interestingly, that couldn't have been done with 20 people.
yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean,
No,
it could have been
well,
a different format.
it could have been a very different format.
Yeah.
That format for that, or it could have been with 20 people and took 3 hours.
Sure.
I posed the theoretical that you could start with 2 platforms and have them 10 and 10 and walk towards each other, lift, and then once 10 are gone, you drop it to 1, which
You could easily, I mean, here's the thing with all of this, there's a million ways to do this.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of this is the creative.
yeah, for sure. Is there an event that surprised you? Like, you know, I know Mary was a gamble, but there was one where you're like, oh, that was, maybe I considered that one just a transition piece, and that ended up being a much cooler, much better, more crucial aspect of the games than I thought.
Yeah, I think maybe the, I don't know what we called them, the one before the standard, those two. Those
Ringer
were
1 and 2.
really-
The Ringer 1 and 2s,
Ringer 1
yeah.
and 2, those were really critical in the outcome
Yeah.
because of what Matt did there.
Yeah.
And,
And on multiple levels too. James Newberry, like that catapulted him up.
Right.
He took some prize home money by selling out, and then it ended up being a cool part of the games too.
yeah, that surprised, those went off almost better than I was thinking they would. And at the last minute, there was actually a layout change we did that Justin suggested. The way I had them built was basically, so you'd go down and do 1 lane, there's a space in a lane, then the next athlete's going down and does it, and that works its way down for the 4 athletes. And then the next one's set up in the lane coming back. So
okay.
it was basically the whole floor used for the 4. For the camera, he suggested it'd be better if we did it like we did.
Yeah.
And I think that worked out great.
Yeah.
So on one side of the floor was 1, and then you came over and did the other.
Yeah.
The original tent was you go down and you turn around, and then when it starts, you just come back.
Come back. Okay.
I asked you about lessons that the athletes should learn and then apply to the next games. What are the lessons that you learned and now we're going to apply?
Well, again, some of those might
Oh.
tip too much.
Right. Okay.
You mentioned in one of your social media posts that you were excited to share your thoughts on the movie The Fittest once it came out.
This, what I'm doing is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, those posts I'm making
Yeah.
are my thoughts on. It's interesting because a lot of people are getting upset at me saying I'm being petty or picking on the athletes, and I view it this way. They gave their perspective, and I'm giving my perspective. And I'm not being petty, I'm just responding. I'm just giving a counter or a point from the person who directs the whole thing, his perspective on the same situation. And I think that's okay, and it's completely fair. And I think people shouldn't think I'm picking on an athlete. Hey, Matt and I are friends, I like Vellner, I like all these guys, but and also what am I doing? I'm also promoting. You know, like, and a lot of people recognize that. The Buttery Boys probably start paying me. I'm promoting their piece, and I'm promoting our sport,
Yeah.
and I'm promoting those athletes. And it's like I'm fueling the fire for our sport. I'm just trying to be a small part of that.
Yeah.
You know, those guys are a huge part of it with that documentary.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to play my part in that process.
All right. I think we've covered it all, unless you got something else you want to dive into.
Pull up.
Oh man.
You got anything else?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of worst. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but like worst case scenario. And I have a note in here that says, I know with your background, you all probably always account for the worst case scenario. If the games are canceled and you have to delay it a year, you know, do you think qualifiers might, and you can speak speculatively, that qualifiers and national champs and things might carry over to next year? So I think that's an interesting thought that I haven't put in a ton of.
If my suggestion, which doesn't necessarily mean would be the decision,
Yeah.
would be start over.
Yeah.
Don't carry over.
Okay.
Restart.
Yeah.
I don't think, like, you know, the NHL is looking at it right now being like, oh, we're gonna, you know, hold the Stanley Cup playoffs and then, you know, in November and then start
Yeah.
the season. Like, sorry guys, it's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
My input.
Cool.
All right. Well, Dave, listen, man, we really appreciate you doing.
No, this was fun.
Taking
Thank
the
you,
time to
guys.
do it and said a lot of good stuff. And I certainly have a new perspective on some things. I don't know if I agree 100%, but I definitely appreciate your perspective on that. And I hope that we get to see your work here in August with the games.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you. All right, man. Thank you. Seriously,
I
appreciate that.
love that, like diving into the data and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's surprising.
That was super. Well,
Dave shows up one time and he's prepared.
oh man, that might have been our longest episode ever.
It's worth it.
Yeah.